Uh, right, right. So all of the classes will be recorded. Few of you who are unable to join, they can always look at the class later at the recording and can go through the slides as well. What else? What else? Yeah, the classes are supposed to be hybrid in the classroom as well as on Zoom. So I try to do some half and half, like some of the classes will be on Zoom and the others will be in the classrooms, but every class will be recorded. So you can look at it, play it afterwards, and then, yeah. So if you're unable to join, you can always look at it afterwards as well. What else? Yeah, I'll just share my screen. All right. Do you now see the main screen, the presentation screen? It shows introduction to AI.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, awesome. It's very good that a few of you can actually communicate, because since I can't see who is talking, or wait, I can also open the chat function. Yeah, I have the chat. So you can also communicate on chat. All right. Let's see. Okay, so we are in the second term of Introduction to Artificial Intelligence. This was offered the last year as the first time the course was offered. And this is the second term of that course. What we have done is that we are using Slack for discussion about the course. I mean, there are some official channels as well. You can do discussions on Canvas. It kind of depends on all of you if you prefer Slack or Canvas. Canvas is not really meant for these kind of collaborations. So the last class we did a lot of collaboration on Slack and it worked very well. So I will share this link afterwards. Actually, you know what? I will share it now as well. So I will share this link with you in the chat. So you can click on it and you can actually join in and sign up to our discussion forum. I'll send it to you afterwards, like in a few minutes. Right. This we already discussed. We have a class of 112 students, and then the lectures. Yeah, we have a lecture on Friday, which is today, and then we have a lab immediately afterwards and a lab on Tuesdays. Now there will not be any lab today. I will explain to you why. But we will publish details of when the lab will come. Now, this Introduction to AI course is a combination of theory plus lab, but most of the discussion we will do in this course is theoretical. So that's one of the reasons it's a bit challenging to find the right lab for you. But when we actually jump on to the Python programming, then we will have some labs. Yeah. Okay, wait. Let me see. Okay. Now, who am I? So my name is Umair Mahmood Imam. Originally, I'm from Pakistan, but I've been living in Norway for almost 10 to 12 years now. I did my master's from distributed computing. So that was like the non-fancy way of calling it artificial intelligence. That was done from Kungliga Tekniska Högskolan in Stockholm, Sweden. And then I moved here. I got a job here and then I just set up my life here in Norway. So I work as an assistant professor at OSLOMET, but that is not my main job. I work on a 20% basis here. My main job is at Router. I'm the head for artificial intelligence and data science. There I have a team of around 26 people. So I manage those people, and yeah, it's a different kind of job over there. It's more of a management job, whereas in OSLOMET, it's more of a teaching job and more of a programming job here at OSLOMET. Then I don't know if any one of you have heard of Offently AI. Has anyone heard of Offently AI? No. Oh, cool, cool. Someone has, yay. So I started Offently AI when I was working at Skatetaten. What is Offently AI? So Offently AI is the community of people working in Offently companies. When I say Offently means state companies inside Norway. And I saw that a lot of people were facing the same problems. Like 3 to 4 years ago, they wanted to work with AI, but they didn't know how to get started. They had problems with the algorithms and so forth. And most of the Offently companies have the same issues. They have a problem with data, cloud computing or not. So I set up this community, and we started like 3 to 4 years ago, and now we're an active community of like 150 members. We are 20, well, at least 30 companies, and we meet up every 2 times in a year. Yeah. Before the pandemic, we had a presentation at Router, so a lot of people came in over there, but it's only for Offently companies because there's a lot of compliance issues. We could not invite like private companies. So that was that. Then I am also the co-founder and CTO of a startup called Tipio.no. Has anyone heard of them? Tipio.no? No. And that's all right. So Tipio is a startup which we kind of try to sell like group deals. You can check it out. It's kind of meant to be more helpful for the consumers. So I worked there for like 3 years, and then I just got busy with other things, so I moved on. But yeah, that startup exists, and we had many funding rounds, and we're expanding the team as well. So take a look at it if you want to apply for some jobs over there as well. They are hiring. Then I'm also the founder of Binaric AI. It's a data labeling company, which is for artificial intelligence. So I'm working with that company as well. But that's my own company. In that company, I did my own development. I made my own product. Then I started working on sales. So you have to do almost everything when you're working in a startup. So that's me. So that means my profile is more of a programming profile, more of a Java programming, then Python programming, then business intelligence, data warehousing. I've been working in the role of an architect, and now I'm working more of a manager, leadership positions, and then on startups as well. So if you have any questions regarding your startup, if you need any advice, if you need any advice on the architectural side, I can help out. So just ask. And if you need some funding advice as well, there are a lot of grants available for students. So just ask, and I'll be able to help. I will be willing to help out. All right, more practical things. We have 3 teacher assistants for the course right now. We should have had 4, but we did not really publish the job advertisement in time. So you have Atika, and then you have Theo. Atika was a TA last year as well, and Theo was a student of the last Intro to AI course, last year's Intro to AI course. Third TA is to be announced soon. We're evaluating the CVs which we receive. So my concern is, like, if you have a question, please get in touch with the TAs, the teacher assistants, or post a question on Slack. If you send an email, there are a lot of emails being circulated inside OSLOMET, so chances are they can get delayed. In Slack, it's just like immediate, so I'm more active on Slack than on emails. The thing is that I need all of you to decide on the class representative. You don't have to do it today, but let's do it in one of the coming classes. I think you already know what a class representative is. Yeah, so we need to decide on that one. Then grading. Yeah, how will the grading be done? So the thing is, this class will have 3 compulsory assignments. So you're allowed to make groups. You can also do it alone, but you're also allowed to make groups. One of them will be a programming exercise. The remaining 2 will be more based on theory, but that can change. So the assignments are, you have to pass the assignments to be able to sit in the exam or submit the project. The final assessment will be based on the academic report, which has a weight of around 30%, and the 70% will be on a multiple choice question exam. It's mentioned 3 hours, but I mean, you don't really need 3 hours for that kind of exam. But assignments are mostly that you have to do the assignments so that you're qualified to work on the academic report and take the exam. Any questions? Use the chat. If you have any questions, you can send a chat directly to me privately, or you can make it available to everyone. But I will answer all the questions in the chat. All right. Yeah, so the thing is, yeah, so the question is the 70% assessment only multiple choice? Well, the final exam last year, it was only multiple choice exam. The format can change, but most of the structure would be a multiple choice exam. And the 70% assessment would be on that exam. So for example, if you score an A, you get like 100 out of 100 in the final exam. That means that you have in the full exam, full kind of evaluation, you have secured 70 out of 70. So and then you will also be evaluated on the 30% for the academic report you have written. Yeah, you're welcome. Someone asked me if you could just do the assignment alone. Yes, you can do the assignments alone. So both assignments and projects it's advisable from our side that you should do in groups of 2 to 4. But if you're alone, you can do it alone as well. Okay. So what's the course about then? What really is the course? Now, you might have seen there are a few other courses in OSLOMET as well. You have one on the master's level. You have one which is more of an advanced version of AI, like practical AI. And this is the introduction to AI. Now, it's very important for me to emphasize that this is not a programming course. This is supposed to clear your misconceptions about artificial intelligence. A lot of you who are taking the course are programmers, but there are a few of you who are not programmers. They don't know what artificial intelligence is. For them, it's just a hype word, and you want to clarify those misconceptions. And that's what we will clarify in this course. So we will start from the most basic thing, trying to cover up what really artificial intelligence is, give you some practical examples, show you how it's being done in real life, how it is around you, and how you can find very examples that are around you. And then we will show you what's the most important thing for AI is data. If you don't have the data, you can't really work with data. So we have 2 or 3 classes on data only. And then when we are done with that, we will then talk about different algorithms inside AI. Which algorithm should you use when, depending on what kind of problem which comes to you. Yeah. And there will be one assignment which will be a programming task. You will be shown to like predict. You will given like a historic data set, and you will be asked to use one of the algorithms to write like a prediction algorithm. So that's that. So there, last year I received some feedback that a few students were hoping this should be more programming course, and they were a bit disappointed by that one. I did tell them in the start it will be like that, but I mean, I want to emphasize it because now you actually have the time. You can leave the course, and you can, if you want to do a very heavy AI programming, this is not the course for you. But if you wanted to understand what AI is from the basic, understand a bit of theory, do a do a just a bit of programming, and understand how data is vital to artificial intelligence, then this is the course for you. So think about it. I mean, it's no problem if you want to leave the course and try something else. You still have a few more days to decide. The question, one of the questions I received is, would there be any mathematics, statistics, linear algebra, etc.? The answer is no. This is not supposed to cover the basics for AI, but rather tell what AI really is. It will show how we use mathematics, statistics, and linear algebra in artificial intelligence, but we will not cover those subjects at all. So if you have a known math background, known statistics background, it is perfectly fine to take this course. Yeah. Yeah, the outline, like a very rough outline. Most of the course slides which we did last year were based on this, but this can change. We'll talk about the basics of AI. I will try to emphasize that artificial intelligence is really stupid. It's not really so problem solving as we think. Few people think AI can solve everything. I don't think that. I think AI is the most overhyped thing and the most difficult area to work in. So I will try to give my arguments why I think AI is so stupid. We'll talk about data, and we'll talk about data science. If you would have heard of machine learning, you would have heard of data. Chances are you would also have heard of data science. This is a new emerging field. Well, not new, it's been around for at least 4 to 5 years, but a lot of companies are focusing on data science now. I'm also the head of data science at Router. So a lot of companies are actually hiring data scientists. So if chances are, if you go outside and you apply for a machine learning job, they will either be hiring for a machine learning engineer or a data science engineer. These are kind of more or less overlapping job positions. We'll talk about different concepts of AI. What are the concepts? By concepts, I mean like well, different branches of AI. You have supervised learning, non-supervised learning, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about machine learning itself. Now, machine learning is a very powerful branch of artificial intelligence. We'll talk about what machine learning is, how it is used, and then we'll talk about the various algorithms inside machine learning. Now, deep learning, we will cover just a small portion of it. It's a beast on its own. We will cover a small portion of it because most of the time will be taken by the basics and the machine learning part. But we will cover one or two algorithms in deep learning. Now, NLP, this is a very exciting field, very, very exciting area. So last year I could not cover NLP at all, but this year, natural language processing, I'll try to cover a few slides on this, just so that you can do like basic level of NLP processing. Then when you talk about introduction to artificial intelligence, you have to talk about responsible AI and ethics in AI. And that's very important because a lot of focus is actually put on these areas. We'll talk about that. All right, we already spoke about this, and this. Yeah. So what are you going to get out of this course? So after we're done with this course, you will be able to explain what AI is. Anyone asks you, I hope you'll be able to say what AI is. You'll be able to distinguish what's machine learning, natural language processing, and deep learning. You'll be able to say specifically, someone comes to you with a problem, you would be able to say you can this problem can be solved with natural language processing or machine learning or deep learning. You will also get an idea on what data is, how to clean it, and you will also be able to identify different use cases which can be solved with artificial intelligence, and of course ethics in AI. So one question I received is, what about neural networks? So I'm sorry, no, they will not be covered in this class. They are neural nets. I think the other course, which is advanced AI or practical AI, that covers neural nets. Yeah, it is. It is a bit too complex to be covered in this a basic course. So one slide back. All right, let's go one slide back here. You can also find the slide in, or perhaps, oh, sorry, I didn't upload the slide. Sorry for that. I will upload them. In the future, I'll upload them before the class so you can access them. Great. I'll just move on now if that's all right. Okay. Books. So there's no official book for the course. The reason is like you find a lot of books and there's a lot of content in the books. And we have done all the homework for you, and there's a lot of content, there's a lot of theory on a specific area, machine learning or deep learning, and the book goes in that direction. Then the book will talk about mathematics and statistics. So what we have done is we have compiled a list of smaller books which you can use. One of them is actually a book written by Andrew Ng. Has anyone heard of Andrew Ng? He's a well-known person when it comes to artificial intelligence. Yeah, he's a really known. So one of the books we are recommending is from Andrew Ng, which is like practical use of AI. There's a blog by Andrew Ng on deep learning as well. So I will actually advise you to check it out. So, I mean, we will upload those PDFs. You can easily access them. So those are more spot on to what we are teaching you. But there's no official book. These are more unofficial books. Coursera. Yeah, you know, any kind of resource, any kind of material is good resource for this course. Coursera is very well, I would say Coursera is very much deep dive into artificial intelligence, right? You have a very well-written course which talks only about math, for example, or statistics, and then it goes jump into artificial intelligence. So sure, try that out as well. But I think for you, so when I take you through this course and I talk about the basics of AI, then you don't need Coursera at all. But when you could jump onto Coursera when we come to the machine learning part, or we come to the natural language processing part, then you can look at Coursera or any other Udemy or YouTube or something, whatever is there, because that's where I think you would need some help looking at other examples. But for the basics, do not try anything else just because it will waste your time. So we have done all this. I mean, I have taken courses from Coursera, Udemy as well. I've read a few books, and this course is like a mixture of all of them, just so you to get like the concise information. All right. Okay. Then this is the end of this slide. I will open up. Wait. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to start another slideshow. So how many of you have started going back to the class? I think you can raise hands. Now I can see. Like raise hand inside Zoom or something. Like physically going to the classrooms. No one? Damn. Okay, one person. Two. So what do you prefer then? I mean, is it better to do it on Zoom, or do you prefer going to like physically in the class? Because then I have to arrange it.
I would prefer going to the class because then it feels a bit more natural to ask questions and maybe show the problems I'm facing and get more feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, I see a lot of people are also replying to the class. Yeah, okay. So what we can do is I have requested like a hybrid classroom. So we can do we will always have the Zoom thing over there as well, right? So we will have a live class running on Zoom, and then for those of you who do not want to come, that's the thing about pandemic. You can, if you are not, if you don't want to come, we will never force you to come. So you can do it from your home as well. And for those of you, as Daniel just said, like those of you who wanted to do it from the class, you can do it from the class. So I would also want to do it from the class. So let's see how well we can do that. Okay, let's start. When do we have a break? There's always like after 45 minutes, right? So is that 15:15 we'll have the break? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So question was after 45 minutes, all right. Question was, yes, I will upload all the recordings. That's the plan. Let's see. All right. Okay. So I'm hoping that you can see my screen now, which says a few statistics on AI. Could you please say yes or no, because I cannot see anyone right now.
Yeah, we see it.
All right, thank you so much. So yeah, thank you for saying that on chat as well. Yes, I will upload so the thing is, as soon as the lecture is done, I have to stop recording, and then Zoom takes almost an hour to convert it into a video file, and then I will upload it. So it could take like 2 or 3 hours, but yeah, it will be directly after the class. So let's talk about a few statistics on artificial intelligence. So as I said, we're going to talk about basics on AI. So right now, the most basic thing is that you should know how well accepted or how well used artificial intelligence is in our society. Now, most of the material in this presentation is taken from a research published by Stanford University. What they did was, or the way the statistics are actually covered, is that they divided into various areas. So let's talk about how much research is being done in artificial intelligence. For those of you who are, I mean, if you're planning to work with PhDs or not, AI is all about research. So you have two sides of AI. You have the research part of artificial intelligence, which is done by university students, PhDs, and all that. And then you have and research institutions, right? And then you have the practical side of AI, which is how you use AI, how it's being used in organizations like Skattedaten, Luther, Facebook, Microsoft, for example. That's the industrial use of AI. But AI cannot progress without research. So a very important factor to see how important artificial intelligence is to see the research. And the research, well, when they did the research on how many AI papers were published, so until 2018, well, until 2021 also, China was the one who was leading the way when it comes to publication of AI. There's always like this fight between China and US when it comes to who will get the most amount of paper journals out. They're very close, but most of the time it's China which kind of takes the lead. Then somewhere down the line, where is it? We have a country called Pakistan, which is strangely higher than Norway. No, Norway isn't even there in the list. No, there is. There's Norway. Yeah, all the way down. No, but that also has to do with the population, right? We have a very small country with small population. So obviously the number of journals coming out is also very small. So that's kind of unfair. Okay, then let's talk about, so research was one thing. Now, the other thing is like, how much time is needed to actually train a model in the cloud? So initially, for those of you who have been working with AI or who have studied anything with AI, the thing is like, when you deploy the model or when you train the artificial intelligence model with huge amounts of data, it takes a long time. It's a training time which the AI model takes to actually come up with an answer. It's like a supercomputer thing, right? You give it a question, it will come back with an answer instantly. But with AI, it takes some time before it can come out with an answer. That process is called training AI, and that takes time. Previously, we did it on our PCs, and PCs are extremely slow because that's just like a processor on it. Then we started using graphical processing units, GPUs, that sped up the process. And then everything went to the cloud where you had specialized tips for AI processing. So in just a span of 2 years, the amount of time needed to train a model has actually fallen from 3 hours to 88 seconds. And that is huge because that means you don't have to wait that long. Hardware is becoming cheaper, especially because of cloud computing. And yeah, AI hardware is easily available. Is there anyone who does not know what cloud computing is? Please say so. I can just give you a very quick introduction of what cloud computing is. Do you want me to give you a quick introduction of cloud computing?
Yes, if you can. I have no idea about it.
All right. So what is cloud computing? Cloud computing is computing, but in a server which is not hosted by you, but hosted by someone else. And that concept of being hosted by someone else where you do not have to buy the server is called cloud computing. So for example, I don't know why they came up with the word cloud, but it's like it's up in the air somewhere. You don't even know where it is. That's the concept of cloud. So what are the examples of cloud computing? For example, Gmail. Gmail is a cloud computing software service you use. You have an account on Gmail, you have an email account, you don't know where the servers are located, but you use the email service. So that's a cloud service which you are using. Another example of cloud service would be, now, I mean, you have Gmail, you have other kind of emails, but let's say you are making an application and you want to deploy that application. So until now, what you have learned is that you deploy it on your computer or you buy a server and you deploy it on that server and then open it to the world. But I mean, think about it. If suddenly you have 100 users accessing your application, your computer or your Mac, it might not be able to sustain that much traffic. And then you will probably have to add it with the GPU. You have to buy a specialized hardware and so on and so on. What cloud computing provides is like you can rent the hardware from manufacturers like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and there are a lot of manufacturers. You can just rent the hardware from them. So the hardware won't come to you, it's just available online. They will give you instances of software access, and then you can deploy your code over there. And then you will only pay for the time you're using for that hardware. That concept is called cloud computing. Before cloud computing, what we used to do in artificial intelligence was when we made an algorithm, we used to deploy and run it on our own physical machines. And that costs a lot of money. For example, 3 years ago when I was in Scotland, I remember one of the team wanted to work with a machine learning project. So Scotland is not using cloud. It buys all the equipment, hardware equipment, because their servers are located inside the office building. So they, for a simple algorithm, like they wanted to try out if they could use machine learning or not. So they had to go to IT and they had to request that hardware. That specialized hardware cost them 2 million kroner just to buy that hardware and run that algorithm. They had to buy that hardware. And I mean, they only use it for a couple of time and then the hardware was just idle. But instead, if they could have used cloud computing, their bill could have been like $100 only. And that's also if you extensively use it, you use all the resources, then you pay like $100 for that. It's a huge cost difference against that. Right. Yeah, that's where your tax money goes. So if you're thinking about where does it go, that's where it goes. No, I shouldn't say that. That's wrong. I used to work in Scotland and they did a very good job. So that's not only a place where does your money go. Okay. Then let's talk about Imagenet. Now, does anyone know what Imagenet is? No. So if you want to work with AI, just Google up Imagenet. You'll find a lot of cool examples. So Imagenet is a huge data source of images which have been compiled by a lot of companies and they put it together. And this is a huge, like a very big data set of images you can find all over the internet. So people who work with image processing, what they do is you use this Imagenet source and they kind of, they put it to their models, and chances are that this can give you a fairly good model that can actually work for you. Again, in 2017, when they started training on Imagenet dataset, it used to cost a lot. Like I think the time is per hour. So per hour, it would cost you $2,000. And then it went all the way down to $7.50 in 2019. Yes, you are right, Ulrich. Ulrich has commented it's like a benchmark to test how fast you can train an AI for it. No, I'm confused. Sorry, I'm confused now. What are you asking? Different AIs.
I was just wondering, like, if it was a sort of data set collected to be used to kind of test if certain AIs are like faster than others or something, if they're all being trained on the same set of images.
I see. Actually, it can be used, but most people who use Imagenet is mostly like a source for their algorithms. But you can also use it as a benchmark for your algorithm too. It depends on the use case, actually.
Okay, so you can use it as like the first thing you train it on, and then you kind of set it out into the world?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Because the benefit of Imagenet is it already gives you a huge collection of images. So then your algorithm will cover like the basic use cases. For example, if you're making an algorithm which could differentiate between a dog and a cat, and that's the only purpose of the algorithm. So you point your camera and the algorithm would say it's a dog or a cat. You have to feed the algorithm with at least, you have to feed the algorithm with thousands of images of dogs and cats. Imagenet already does that purpose for you. But for a specialized use case, then you have to pick up those images.
Is it like Kafka, or when you're supposed to prove you're not a robot and you have to press images of?
It could be that. It could be that. I'm not sure which sources are coming for capture. There's someone else who raised their hand. Okay. I mean, if just ask the question when the other person is done asking the question, since I can't see you. So I just see notification coming that someone has raised their hand. Okay. Yeah, the other thing. No problem, Devil. Okay, the other thing is image generation. Now, I'm sure you've heard about deepfakes, right? Deepfakes are a very popular area in artificial intelligence, and you can see a lot of services which uses them. So when AI can be used to do prediction, it can also be used to generate a lot of things. So one thing which has improved over the years is how well can artificial intelligence generate an image. And when it comes to generating a face, it has done remarkably well. Like in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, it's like they're generating more human-like people. And of course, you have bad uses of it as well, like in deepfakes, which is used a lot in pornography. It's also being used to generate videos which can be politically motivated. It can also be used. It's also being used as a revenge porn thing, which is also very under a lot of scrutiny nowadays. But then there's also an interesting area where it's being used in a positive way, and that's like when you have the actors who like in the film industry, a lot of film media people are using it for those people who are unable to participate in the movie or who don't have time or who have died. So they're using their images from historical and trying to generate deepfakes on them, which can be used inside the movies going forward. So I mean, of course, you will have both positive and negative things, but yeah, image generation has come a long way. Yeah, I mean, deepfake is a very scary thing. All right, I would like to talk about who is hiring in AI, but let's take a small 15 minutes break. So it's 15:15 right now. Yeah, Andreas, you had a question. Hello, can you hear me? Or I can't hear anyone, so I'm assuming that no one is asking anything. All right, so let's take a look at the hiring in artificial intelligence. So which countries are hiring the most in AI? We would have assumed that US was the one which is hiring the most, but that's not really the case. Singapore and Brazil, of all places, very interesting that they are hiring the most when it comes to when it comes to AI. I saw the recent statistics, and like you do have India catching up as well. So of course China is again like the biggest one. Yeah, you do have a US, but it's pretty much down there. Yeah, if you take a look at the number of job postings, what kind of jobs are they kind of hiring the most on? So of course, machine learning takes the mark. So I mean, chances are if you're good in machine learning, because machine learning is kind of the base as well, right? Most of the companies use machine learning as well. It's being used in data. Well, everything is being used with data, so that's wrong. No, I mean, machine learning jobs are most in demand nowadays. Then, right, which sector is posting what kind of jobs? So, yeah, this is just an information graph. Yeah, so there's a very important saying called follow the money. Like if you wanna think, especially in tech, if you want to decide which fields to go into, or if you want to set up your own startup, you should always follow the money where the money is actually being invested in. And this is about everything from government grants to private investment. And when we look at artificial intelligence, how much money was invested until 2019? So, I mean, 2018 was the peak. That is probably also the time where you also heard about AI a lot. Tesla was very much in the news. They were working with autonomous driving, which failed. No autonomous driving until now. But a lot of money went in startups in 2018. 2019, we saw a bit of slump. 2020, of course, there was a slump. But 2021, it's actually gone very much up again. So there's a huge interest from investors in those two areas. One of them is cryptocurrency, another one is artificial intelligence. So these two fields are very hot. Right. So when you talk about private investment, how much private money flowed in? So most of the countries which received more, the money was US and China. Now, why China? Does someone know why China is getting there's a lot of private investment being done in China in AI? Can anyone? All right. I mean, it's fine if they don't have the answer for this. Overwhelming. Well, yeah, okay. But that should be a state-sponsored thing, right? And it can only be done to a specific extent. But now we're talking about private investment, and there are giant companies in China like Alibaba. You have Alipay. You have Tencent. What was the other one? TikTok, right? Now these companies have invested a lot in tech, and their technology has improved a lot in the last years, and they've been investing a lot on artificial intelligence as well. So that's why these giants are investing further in like smaller startups. They're investing in setting up their own AI laboratories, research centers. The pace of development is huge over there. So only two companies who are kind of competing is actually US and China when it comes to that one. It's just that there are more rich people in US as compared to China, so they invest more. That's why you have a more higher US investment than China. Yeah, and I mean, the two areas which take the most amount of investment is driverless cars, autonomous driving, and then you have the health sector. And then everything else comes down like, yeah, facial recognition, digital content, and finance, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Right. Just some information on which startup received most funding in artificial intelligence. Which area? Sorry. So data tools, like tools which can actually process or help artificial intelligence do more, they receive the most. Now, fintech is all the way down to number five. Now, this figure was taken in 2000. This research was done in 2019, but I'm assuming because a lot of money is being poured into fintech nowadays, I think this graph would be different today because fintech might come above data tools. There's a lot of money flowing into online banks and these kind of financial services, which also includes like crypto, I guess. Right. So again, US, Europe, and China, they take the biggest amount of share when it comes to investment. So it's nice that we are based here in Europe. It's easy to set up an AI startup. But I mean, of course, if you look at Israel, Singapore, and Iceland, I mean, Iceland, I'm not so sure, but Israel and Singapore, I mean, these two countries are doing a lot, and they have a lot of money flowing in these two countries. Okay. Now, corporate perception of AI. Now, this is very important because whenever a new technology is announced, there are two kind of users for that technology. One of them is us, which are simple person, and then the second kind of users are corporations. So it's very important to see how they are actually using AI. Because yeah, we can write our algorithms and we can make it for other people as well. But if corporations don't jump on it, then those applications or services can become obsolete. So from 2016 onwards to 2018, when everyone started talking about AI, that's when companies started publicly talking about artificial intelligence, especially in their earnings call, that this is our focus, we have to invest on it. Financial companies, out of most of them, were the ones talking a lot about using AI, but they were not the ones using most of them, but talking a lot like we should use AI going forward. Yeah, so that was that. Right, so let's talk about driverless cars. How many of you think we will get driverless cars in the next 2 years? No one? No. Is there anyone which thinks that they'll be able to get that? Because I'm very keen on knowing their point of view. Like 5 years, 5 years, yeah, sure. Now, could happen in 5 years. When I bought my first Tesla, well, my only Tesla, the reason I bought it in 2018 or 19 was based on the promise that I will be able to use self-driving service in it, right? That's what they were selling it on. Like, oh, you buy a Tesla, you will have autonomous driving. It was being offered like an add-on package. You pay like 50,000 kroner and you will get like a driverless full self-driving capability. And fast forward to 2021, and it's the most shittiest autonomous service you can ever use. I mean, it's good. It's much better than the other services out there. But if you are driving and if you are keeping your mind open and keeping your eyes open on the road, and you decide, all right, let's switch over to the autonomous driving, you want the same kind of performance as you yourself would be putting into that path or that journey. The problem is we have not been able to achieve that just because it's much harder to develop an autonomous cars as compared to the safety regulations we have in place. So Tesla was being sold on a false promise. It still is, but the amount of work they have done is actually a lot. It's not easy making a self-driving car. So yeah, I agree. Like 5 years, we might see some self-driving cars, but there are other companies also doing a lot of work over there. So we might see something positive coming from their side. Yeah, so one thing is like it can be doable. One question on the chat is that it can be doable, but will it be ethically accepted? Now that's a very interesting question. So what do you mean by ethically accepted on self-driving cars? Yeah, fatalities. Yes, you're right. Like Tesla just now was actually is being investigated for the crashes which were done due to AI driving. Sorry, not AI driving, the autopilot, which is in the basic, which is a basic version of autonomous driving. And it's being investigated for all the accidents that have happened. So yeah, will it be accepted or not? That's the biggest problem. Like 2 days ago, I was driving from Bottom to Oslo, and 2 times it happened that my autopilot stopped working and it was about to crash into the other car. So I had to be fully aware, like I had to take over and control it. And then the rest of the drive, I just turn it off. Like I don't know what was wrong with the autopilot. So driving is one of the areas where you can't even accept 1% error. It has to be that perfect. And the problem with artificial intelligence is that there's always an error rate in it. Like if you're using, if you make an algorithm, a simple algorithm, no AI at all, and the algorithm is very simple as that if you press the button Q, the output should also be the character Q. That's a very simple algorithm, right? That's a controlled algorithm and it will be 100% accurate. But if you make the same algorithm using artificial intelligence, what happens is that if you press the button Q, you will get a prediction score like, all right, it's a 99% accuracy that you will get the character Q, but there's also a 1% error that you might get the letter A or the letter S or D or E or F or any of those characters. That's the problem with AI. It can never give you 100%. It can, but we have not reached that point that it can give us like a pure 100% prediction. And when you apply the same prediction to autonomous driving, that makes it a bit scary. Anyway, yeah, a good comment. Okay, chat. What does chat say? Won't machines eventually get better than humans at driving? At point wouldn't let. Yes, eventually that will happen. So I'm not saying AI is crap. I'm just saying that we have not been able to achieve that point yet. But when we achieve that point, yes, then it probably will be outlawed till that humans can't drive because we make more accidents than machines do. And then Espen talks about the trolley problem. That's very hard for AI. That is true. And then Garik says that Tesla did an interesting AI presentation today. I haven't seen that, but thank you for pointing it out. I'll check it out. Okay, the number of countries who are testing autonomous vehicles is, yeah, a lot of the developed countries. And then a few reports by California, like the number of crashes which are being done, which are performed by the autonomous vehicles. You probably heard a few in the news as well. There was once, which was by by Uber, which ran into a pedestrian crossing the road with their bicycle. That made the headlines, but there are a lot more crashes. Yeah. Any questions on autonomous driving? No. All right. So let's talk about autonomous weapons. I mean, yes, we hear a lot about AI being used in cars, in our phones, in our apps, daily life, image processing in the cameras. But one thing we hardly hear about is how is it being used in the defense industry? And yeah, I mean, US, well, not even US, a lot of countries are spending a lot when it comes to autonomous devices. I mean, it can be as simple as making a drone which can fly on its own, to making a drone which can actually make decisions on which targets to attack. Right now, a lot of drones are being controlled by humans, right? And they have to make a decision on which place to attack or not, but they're also developing ones which can make a decision on their own. Yeah, that was I had only one slide on the defense. Robots. Let's see, what do we have about robots? Yeah, I'm soon done with all this stats, so then we can just exit the presentation and just chat about it. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to installation of robots, used to hear a lot about Japan, but now it's China. China makes sense because they have a lot of, they're investing a lot in they took over manufacturing a long time ago. So now they're making their manufacturing process more intelligent. What else? Okay, web search and world news. Yeah, okay, this is just like some statistics taken from Google. What people have been talking about. Yeah, simple stats. Okay, this is also simple. Yeah, ethics in AI. So this is the second last slide. And that, okay, yeah. Okay, so what really are ethics in AI? Right. Suppose you're given a task. I give you a task of making like a 1 second. Yeah. Suppose I give you a task that you need to make like a machine learning an image analysis algorithm, and your camera should be able to detect if there's a person in the image or not. And you start with the basic data set available, and you start populating it. And you take a data set from Imagenet, and you make a very good algorithm. And then I'm like, all right, you have made this algorithm which detects people. Now, based on this data set, we should be able to control how many people can enter the building or not. And then we put the AI algorithm on it. Now, the ethical question which comes in, there are many ethical questions which come in. Like, are you even allowed to detect people and identify them through that algorithm? That is question one. The question two would be, you probably, like, we are living in Norway, right? So we are kind of biased towards the data set around us. Like, we will first use a data set available publicly, which is Imagenet. Then if we want to improve the prediction score for our algorithm, we will populate the data set with our own image sets. Like, you would use pictures from your camera library, or from your friends, or from the local university, and so on. But that creates an issue. For example, since we live in Norway, we might end up making a data set which has a lot more white people than non-white people. And exactly the same thing can be applied to a person who is all the way down in Pakistan. And I give them the same question, and they make an algorithm which is biased, because their algorithm is based on the data set which they acquired from their social surroundings, because that's the data set they had. Now, this is a bias in data set which can lead to development of an algorithm which will have an ethical problem, because you don't know how this algorithm will be used. Your algorithm is actually being used to detect if there's a person in the camera or not. But if this algorithm is used to grant these people access to a building, or grant them food, for example, food voucher or something like that, then you have an ethical problem, because most of the people being identified in the algorithm are either all of the brown people if developed in Pakistan, or white people if developed here in Norway. So so that's one ethical problem we have to consider. The other ethical problem is when it comes to wait, let me show you an exact. Yeah, the other one is, so that was a fairness thing, right? You have to give every person, another person, every class of people the equal opportunity to be represented or evaluated by that algorithm. Then the other thing is, you also have to be able to explain your algorithm. Like, how did you develop this algorithm? What was the data set you used? The biggest problem with AI is that we cannot explain how AI was done. Since the base of algorithm is all statistics, it's all based on what has happened before and what will happen in the future. If you make a simple again, coming back to the same example, like if you develop an algorithm which detects what kind of key have you pressed on the keyboard, you can explain that algorithm. You can tell, like, when you press the key, there's a connection from the hardware which goes down, and it's there's a hardware connector which is then connected to the gate operator, where you get a signal of 0 or 1, and based on that signal you can identify what happens or what is the output is coming out. But when you make an AI algorithm, your explanation, you have to explain the algorithm. All right, this is the model I use, but then you also have to explain the data which was used in the algorithm. Now, data is the key element of AI, because the way artificial intelligence works is that it takes a huge amount of data sets of historical patterns. It then trains itself. Like, this was the input and that was the output. This was the input, that was the output. And that kind of repeats for almost 1 million times. And then it will learn by saying, like, hey, I have learned this in my history, so I think if you press Q, the answer will be Q. That's hard to explain because no one can actually go through 1 million data sets and see where the problem was. That is the same problem when it's come to transparency, accountability, data privacy, and the human control. How would you implement those things? So I mean, these all things led to a lot of institutions, a lot of companies, a lot of people from the government coming around and talking about ethics in AI, which eventually led to many organizations and governments proposing policies around AI. Has anyone heard of this? What is it called? AI Alliance by European Union? No. Okay. Can you all hear me fine? I haven't received any chat in a while, so I'm just wondering if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
All right, great. So EU made like an artificial intelligence alliance 4 years ago. You can like Google it up and you will find some information about it. So what they did was they invited people from all around European Union, and they asked their input on how we can define policies around AI. Because everyone started using AI, they were like, we cannot have algorithms which have ethical issues, which have these kind of issues, blah, blah, blah. And they made like a guideline policy of how it's just a guideline. You don't, I mean, it's advisable if you follow it, but they're not enforcing it on you. So if you want your AI to be open and accessible and ethical, then it's nice to follow those guidelines. Now, can you tell me, like, if there's a startup based in Europe and there's a startup based in US or China, and they're working on exactly the same problem, which startup do you think will have a difficult time implementing their algorithm than the other one? Would you like to clarify why, Ulrich? Yes, that's the problem with Europe, and that's the biggest. Now, from an ethical point of view, we see that the rights of humans should be protected by algorithms, by tech companies, and Europe is perhaps a very good place to live because everything is focused on policies, focused on how things should work and structure. But when it comes from a tech point of view or a startup point of view, there's just an extra hurdle. Like, you're working with data, and you start working with data, you start working with AI, you've made everything, the algorithm works fine, and then you realize that all the work you have done is wrong because you have to implement all the guidelines laid out by European Union. Then you have to start everything from scratch, or you have to keep everything in mind before you build an algorithm. While the startups based in US and China, they don't have this problem. So they collect data in whatever way they want to. They design algorithms in whatever way they want to, and it's easier for them to succeed than the European startups. Daniel, you raised a hand.
Yes, I was just wondering if the legal hurdles in Europe are personal recognition or human recognition.
Personal.
Okay.
These are mostly personal because I don't know if you have heard of GDPR. GDPR was introduced by European Union 4 to 5 years ago. That was the time GDPR was introduced to protect the personal data of everyone. Like, it's very important that our data as personal people it should be protected. But then when you look on the opposite side, when you look at how we working in the companies have to implement these guidelines, GDPR is enforced. You have to follow GDPR. This is not a guideline. This is also one of the reasons when you go to website, when accessing from Europe, you will always get a notification like, do you want cookies? Do you want your data to be shared by other companies and all that? So that's because GDPR is enforced, and companies who do not enforce GDPR, they will be fined by European Union. But on the other hand, when you look at companies who are trying to work around GDPR or offer their services, it's so much hard to work with GDPR. There's so much data we cannot process just because of the GDPR limitations. Because of GDPR, a lot of state companies cannot store their data in the cloud because there's a lot of personal information available. So we have to find ways around it. We have to either encrypt them and store them in the cloud, or not store them in the cloud at all. Yeah, that was one example. What else? Espen said there needs to be oversight, though. Elon Musk is basically screaming for oversight in the US. So US has started. There are 2 states. One of them is California, and I think it's only California, which also started working on something similar to GDPR, protection of personal data. And when you have protection of personal data, then all the AI algorithms which are using that data will automatically come under that same guideline. And Ulrich says, could it be compatible with allowing non-conforming AI algorithms operate within the EU? Yeah, this is being done today, right? GDPR kind of protects a lot of people. So when it comes to algorithms being run by TikTok, for example, they have to follow the guidelines of Europe when they are launching their services in Europe. You probably have heard like Facebook was fine or Microsoft was fine. That because they were violating the rules for GDPR inside Europe. And then Espen says, Persian one for yes, this is very important. This is what all often 3 companies have to follow. Well, everyone has to follow in Norway, all companies. Then Rick says to give economic incentive by not being able to sell products in EU unless you follow the rules. Yeah, so what they say is like you can sell your product in EU, but then if you don't follow the guidelines, we will fine you, and the fines are very huge. So I mean, eventually you will just shut down your shop and move away. Espen says, aren't there now growing businesses of data anonymization tools for? Yes, there are. Very good point. But the thing with data anonymization is, for example, in Router also we made like a data anonymization tool. What's a data anonymization tool? For those of you who don't know, Data anonymization is when you have some data and you have my data, right? You have my name, you have my birth date, you have my gender information, you have my height information, and so on. But GDPR says you cannot store sensitive data. So what we do is we use an anonymization tool. What it does is it takes the same data and it creates another set of data which is identical to this data, but it changes a few characteristics. So you cannot, when you look at that data, you cannot identify if this is the same person which was previous one. So if I anonymize my information, my name will change, my date of birth will remain the same, my gender might change, so forth. So anyone who looks at that data is unable to say like this data belonged to Umair, for example. And the funny thing is, this is what Skatetaten uses inside their internal systems. So when you call Skatetaten, right, you're like, no, not that. Internally in Skatetaten, if they are looking at your tax information, they're looking at my tax information, right? And they are saying like, this is Umair's tax files. So they don't see the name Umair over there. They see name like Lars, for example, or Olav. And that's a very good example of how they use data anonymization. The reason they do that is to make sure that no decision is taken based on the name of the person, for example, or the ethnicity of the person. This, I think, should also be used when it comes to hiring processes, but that's a different discussion. So yeah, data anonymization is in demand, especially for AI, but yeah, it's very hard to implement those tools also because it differs from use case to use case. So that was it. Do we have any questions? Any feedback? I'm looking at my email right now and I got like how many emails? So many emails that people have joined on Slack. I think I also need to update my preferences here. Right. So as we discussed earlier, there won't be any lab today. We will publish details of the lab going forward. The Slack is there for you to discuss ideas, share ideas, ask questions. We'll make I mean, you can have like an informal chat over there as well, share articles on AI. Yeah, I did share the link for Slack, but if you just join, I can copy paste it. Yeah. Right. What else? Yeah, there's going to be an introduction to Python class. This is like a hands-on class for people who do not know Python. How many of you do not know Python programming language? Like, do not know anything about Python, the basics of Python? Please raise your hands so I can get an idea. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, we have enough people to actually make a decision that we should have an introduction to Python class. So the university is actually doing a crash course in Python. So I'll ask Gustavo, he's my manager in OSLOMET. I'll ask him what class is it, and I can share that with you. It's an intensive class. Please take that class. It's very important to work with AI. I mean, if you have worked with other programming languages, it's very easy. Python is actually much easier than other programming languages. It's just that if you have experience with Java, then you have to change the mindset to work with Python. That was a struggle I had, but I mean, you overcome it. It's just not a problem. So I will ask Gustavo that and come back to you. Anything else? Yes, Daniel.
Are we supposed to use algorithms ourselves, or are we going to just download and import it into projects with Python?
You're going to import them. So
Okay.
when you say use them ourselves, I'm not sure if I follow you.
I mean, are we going to learn some algorithms and how to write them and
Yes.
data sheets and okay.
Yeah. So we will show you different kind of algorithms to use based on different kind of use cases. For example, if you want to predict the value for a house, for example, what kind of algorithm, what kind of machine learning algorithm should you use? If you want to predict a stock market prediction, what kind of algorithm will you use then? So on and so on. And then we'll give you, then you can use those algorithms in your application. The thing with AI is that two kind of development works being done in AI. One of them is a research work where you make your own algorithm. In this class, and until you do your master's or work in like some company, chances are you will never make your own algorithm. But if you're working in doing a PhD or you're working in a research organization, then yes, you will make your own algorithm. But I mean, that's a different kind of field. All right. Then I think we can just call it a day. I will publish this lecture as soon as Zoom is done processing it. But I mean, if you think of any question later as well, send a message on Slack. I'll be there to answer. All right. Well, thank you so much for today.
Sorry, there was a problem on my Zoom, it crashed. But yeah, bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thanks.